Good afternoon. Before I discuss the scheduled topic of today's press conference, I do want to say a few words about the gun violence that continues to surge throughout our city. Last year, 278 people in Los Angeles died from gun violence. Nearly 1,500 people, 1,499 people were shot in Los Angeles last year. These are both substantial increases from the year before. And I think that for most Angelenos, the numbers can be sort of mind-numbing. We need to get very specific about what this impact is in people's lives. A little less than a week ago, a father, Alejandro Garcia, was just doing his job at a Taco Bell in South Los Angeles. He was working alongside his son that night. And yet, that night, one of the customers at Taco Bell shot Alejandro and killed him in front of his 19-year-old son. I was at the prayer vigil for Mr. Garcia and his family just a few nights ago. It's a heart-wrenching thing when a family loses a beloved husband, father, and son. And then just a couple nights later, LAPD officer Fernando Arroyos and his girlfriend were just shopping for a house. They were just house hunting. But by the end of the evening, Officer Arroyos had been shot in a situation where he was just trying to protect himself and his girlfriend. These are incidents among many in our city that should shake all of us to our core. We need to do more with regard to gun violence. And I want to say that in just a couple days, next week, I am going to be issuing a series of recommendations for how I think our community can do better, a strategy for how we can address the gun violence that continues to ravage so many neighborhoods and devastate so many families. So I'll be back to talk to you about this in just a few days. For today, I want to address another emergency, and that's our COVID emergency. And I want to speak about a range of issues that relate to protecting our residents, issues that affect consumers in their pocketbooks, but that could also have a far more serious impact. Since the pandemic started, I'm very proud. I think there's been no public law office in the nation that has been as impactful as ours in grappling with issues in the pandemic. Early on, it was contending with price gouging for personal protective gear like, hand sanitizer and masks, where we focused not only on online sellers, but brick and mortar stores as well. We filed criminal charges and sent cease and desist letters, and again prevented a practice from continuing. And we got restitution as well for consumers. We pursued civil actions also, again, on fake test kits and preventions and cures, with an impact that was extremely significant. Again, hundreds of thousands of dollars of restitution for customers and stopping practices in their tracks. And we need to reinvigorate that consumer protection work around now a new set of issues that relate to COVID testing. And let me talk about COVID test kits and price gouging first. Obviously, Angelenos are doing everything we can to protect ourselves and our families from COVID. People are getting vaccinated and boosted, and if you haven't already gotten vaccinated and boosted, I urge that you do so. Our office has been extremely vigilant, including in court cases, in enforcing the city's vaccine mandates. Please get vaccinated and boosted if you're eligible to do it. And in addition, of course, we know that Angelenos are contracting COVID at record numbers. and self-isolating and grappling with the impacts of that on themselves, on their families, and on their coworkers. But there's another thing happening now. As happened at the beginning of the pandemic, and has so often happens in the midst of emergencies, there are those who would prey on the fears of people in the midst of a pandemic like this and take advantage of them by jacking up the prices, for example, of COVID home tests. Now, I want to be clear about this. In addition to ripping off consumers and hurting them in their pocketbooks, if there is price gouging underway, it also has this other consequence. It stokes fear and panic. And fear and panic are our enemies right now. There are clear steps we all need to be taking, and those steps ought not be clouded by a price gouging situation that gets people to engage in that panic, has them go out and allow themselves to be preyed upon, paying too much money, trying to hoard a product. We can do better than this. And I would much rather prevent a problem from escalating than have to deal with the aftermath and vindicate people's rights, because then there's been victims involved. So let's work together to prevent this. And here is what I mean. Governor Newsom just issued an executive order on price gouging. For everyone who is watching or listening, this is what price gouging means. If before January 8th, which was the date of Governor Newsom's order, there was a seller of a home test kit, that seller cannot sell it for more than 10% more than it sold before Governor Newsom's emergency order. And if a seller wasn't yet selling test kits, that seller can only sell it for up to 50% more than it cost that seller to get and produce in the first place. The price point for these tests can vary. I was able to procure home test kits from a drugstore for about $10. Others are paying $15 or $20. So if you see a price that is dramatically higher than those, then that should be a warning sign that someone may be engaging in price gouging. And here's what I want to say about what you do when that happens. If you think that you're confronting an incidence of price gouging, then first, you don't have to buy the product to report it to us. If you do buy it, keep a receipt. If you happen to know what it costs beforehand and have evidence of that, all the better. If it turns out that you have a screenshot of something online that you can take, that would be good as well. You know, here is an example of one among many home test kits that are available. And again, something like this should cost in the range of, $15, $20 at most for a couple tests that are included in the package. But I want to say more about test kits. Price gouging is a big issue. We need to tamp it down before it starts. And when it comes to price gouging, the penalties are up to $1,000 and 6 months in jail for each instance of price gouging. But there's something else about test kits. We need to be sure that the test kits that we're purchasing are themselves legitimate. Now, the Food and Drug Administration, or the federal government, has on its website a list of legitimate home tests. What does that mean? The FDA is very clear on its website. It has on an emergency basis authorized, keyword, authorized the use of these tests. This is an example of one that's been authorized. Authorized, the FDA says, is not approved or cleared. So on this box, for example, you can see in this corner the words FDA emergency use authorized. Those words are the right words. And I will tell you, if you come across a home test kit that says FDA approved, that is a warning signal to you, because the FDA has not approved, using that word, any test kits. And you should buy a different test than one that says that on its box. So go to the FDA's website. You can see the tests that have been authorized for emergency use by the FDA. Other things, suggestions I want to make to you. You might get online solicitations that you haven't asked for a home test kit. I would not bite. Don't click on those offers. unilaterally seek out a test. LA County has 13 locations where you can pick up a test. Those are good locations to which to go. I know that they can be in short supply in some locations, and be moderate in your purchases. It is that most stores are limiting the amount of tests that you can purchase at any one time. And bear in mind, again, the importance of the legitimacy of the product. This is a case where if you buy a product and it's not legitimate, it isn't just a matter of getting ripped off. It also means that you could be getting a result that has no meaning whatsoever, and you might have vulnerable friends or coworkers or little kids who can't get vaccinated in your house, and you could be passing COVID on to them. So be vigilant when it comes to home test kits and their authenticity. And the third thing I want to talk about is these pop-up locations that we've been seeing emerge throughout Los Angeles, often in commercial parking lots, for example. The LA County Department of Public Health has a website that has a list of approved testing locations. Now, I want to point out there are testing locations that are legitimate that are not yet on the LA County website. And if you're going to one of those, after you've compared the name of that location to the list on the website, then I would urge, because they could be legitimate, I would urge that you look online for complaints about that location, for reviews of that location, give you a sense of whether this is a location that you can count on. Another way to determine whether a pop-up location is in fact legitimate, the Centers for Disease Control requires a specific license. It's called a CLIA license. CLIA, let me say it again, CLIA license number. You should look for it. You should ask what tests they're using, because again, the FDA's website says which tests are legitimate for a testing site to use. And look for other indicia of the legitimacy of the site. For example, are the workers there fully masked with proper masks? Are they engaged in protocols that give you the sense that this is a legitimate, safe location? With regard to home test kits and with regard to testing sites, pay with credit cards, because it could be that a testing site that's not legitimate may never send you results. And you need to be able to stop the payment that has been otherwise authorized by you to that site. And the last thing I'll say is, with regard to all things COVID, be very careful about what personal information you give out. When I went to get a PCR test recently, for example, all I had to give out were a couple numbers from my health insurance card, and that was it. There could be instances in either by folks going door to door or online or even at a testing site that's not legitimate where folks are seeking to get your personal information. And if they're seeking your personal information, we're talking about identity theft. So be very conservative about the personal information that you disclose, because you don't have to disclose very much at a legitimate testing site. So if you have a concern about price gouging, about the legitimacy of a home test, or about the legality of a pop-up location for testing, contact my office. We want to step in. As we've done throughout the pandemic, we want to stand up for you. We want to be sure that your rights are being protected, that public health is being protected. We want to be sure we're doing all we can. So you can contact us online at lacityattorney.org /COVID-19, lacityattorney.org /COVID-19, or you can call us at 213-978-8070, 213-978-8070. So I've dispensed a lot of information today, but I think it can be distilled to this. With regard to price gouging, it's an issue that we need to nip in the bud at its inception, and we can do that if you as a consumer are vigilant about what the going rate ought to be, and if you think that the rate that you're being charged is much higher than that, contact us, because there are penalties associated with price gouging. If you're not sure if the home test kit that you're looking at is authentic, just compare that test kit to the authorized tests that are on the FDA's website. Be careful about how you pay for these items and how much information you give out. And take advantage of the LA County sites around the region here that are distributing home tests. If you're not sure that the pop-up location where you're contemplating getting tested is authentic, ask for that CLIA license number. Look at the LA County website. Look online if it's not on the website to see if it's been reviewed well and if there are few complaints. And get a sense as to whether the site is engaging in the kind of protocols that make you feel that this is a safe location because it's a professionally run operation. We need to protect each other in this pandemic. We've never seen numbers this high. We need to tamp them down. There are signs across the country that Omicron is spiking and then starting to descend. Let's make Los Angeles the place that descends the most rapidly because we are doing the most we can for each other. I want to thank the Los Angeles County Department of Consumer and Business Affairs for being our teammate on this issue. They've been collaborating on cracking down on price gouging just as they did at the beginning of the pandemic. I want to always thank our partners at Channel 35, LA City View, for helping get the word out. I'm going to say a few words in Spanish, and then I'm happy to take questions, Rob, if there are questions. So, ahora en español. Frente al mayor número de casos de COVID-19 desde el comienzo de la pandemia, Angelenos están trabajando arduamente para seguir las instrucciones del Departamento de Salud Pública, incluyendo pruebas y aislamiento, para proteger a sus familias, compañeros de trabajo y su comunidad. Desafortunadamente, al igual que vimos al comienzo de la pandemia, algunas personas están tratando de ganar dinero de esta crisis, aumentando el precio de las pruebas en caso de COVID-19. Esto hace que las pruebas sean más difíciles de conseguir para Angelenos. Los consumidores deben tener cuidado con altos precios de estas pruebas y informar cualquier sospecha de aumento de precios a mi oficina. Esto nos ayudará a identificar posibles violaciones y tomar medidas. No tiene que comprar un producto para informar sobre el aumento de precios. Solo sospechar es suficiente. Puede reportar una queja del consumidor por medio de la página lacityattorney.org o llamar a 213-978-8070. Gracias. Okay, Rob, any questions?
Yes. The first question comes from Stephen Gregory at KFI 640 News. Have there been any price gouging complaints? Are there any cases?
Thanks, Stephen. So that we have received the beginnings of some complaints, a handful so far. We have no cases yet. The matters that we've just received are currently under investigation, analysis by our office. If they result in a prosecution or a civil action, we'll immediately apprise the public.
And the next question is from Margaret Carrero at KNX News 97.1 FM. She asks, San Francisco City Attorney is investigating a local COVID testing operator that may be operating illegally. Are you probing any here in the city of LA?
Hi, Margaret. Thanks for your question. The answer is yes. I can't say more at this time, but the answer is yes.
Next question, Araceli Martinez, reporter with La Opinion. What is the risk of identity theft of personal information robbery when you at a testing site in which they ask you for your social and copy of your ID and health insurance? How can we be sure that they are not selling that information at our risk?
Araceli, thank you. It's a very important question. Now, first, I would say be very conservative about giving out your personal information. As I mentioned, when I personally recently went to get a PCR test, All I had to reveal about myself was essentially my name and my address and a couple sets of numbers from my health insurance card, and that's it. Be very wary about giving out your Social Security number in such locations. They don't need much. I never had to give up my driver's license, for example, each time I've had a PCR test, and I've had several. I've literally only had to give out the information from my health insurance card. And there are entities that are seeking to prey on consumers at this point, and they could be getting your personal identifying information, selling it, and then, of course, identity theft follows. So be very careful about giving out that information, very conservative about it. And I urge that people, it's not just at testing sites, it's also online. It's also because we have had people trying to scam go door to door in other parts of the country. Be very careful about your personal data.
Next question, Azalea Iniguez from Telemundo 52. What are the correct prices or range of prices for the at-home test kits? How do people know what is an abusive price?
Great. Thanks, Azalea. So the answer is, again, I recently purchased home test kits for $10 each from a drugstore. Others have recently purchased test kits in the $15 range. At other retailers, they've cost about $20, a little bit less than that. So something in that $10 to $20 range is the proper range. Something that is significantly higher than that should set off a real warning signal for you and a real red flag. There was a report on a news station about the sale of test kits for $49.99, if I'm not mistaken, something close to $50 for a package that contained 2 test kits. That situation would be worthy of investigation. I'll repeat again the rules. Governor Newsom's January 8th executive order says that there is a penalty for price gouging of up to 6 months and $1,000 for each instance of price gouging. Price gouging is defined this way. If the seller of the product was selling a home test kit the day before the January 8th order, then that seller can only sell it for 10% more than that after the order. And if there's a seller who wasn't selling test kits up until the date of that order and is now selling them for the first time, they can't sell it for more than 50% more than it costs them to produce that kit. So those are the rules. And again, I would say that something greater than about $20 gets to be, that's about the price range. So if it's 10% more than that, call it mid-20s, maybe okay. Beyond that, I would be concerned, and I would report it so we can follow up.
Next question, Camilla Third-Day-Coup. Do you think voters might have a hard time trusting you given the DWP scandal and the fact the high-ranking official in your office has now agreed to plead guilty?
Well, I can't discuss, and I will not discuss electoral politics here in this room because I'm here in a public space. But I can say, as a general matter, given my role as city attorney, that integrity is the hallmark of everything we do in this office. Now, in my office, we've had maybe 300,000 cases since I've been city attorney and tons of laws we've written and programs. I own all of that. I own our successes, of which there have been many, and I own any mistakes or serious errors that emerge from this office too, because that's what leaders do. They take responsibility for the actions, including of their staff, even as in this case there was criminal misconduct that someone made an effort to conceal. So you will see our office continue to be decisive and transparent as we move forward. And my job is to continue to convey to the public by every action that we take that we're going to be a force for good in this city. And my job is to continue to display personally the highest standards of integrity. I'm intent on doing all that. Thanks for your question.
And the next question, Dakota Smith, reporter with the Los Angeles Times. Did you appear before the grand jury in the DWP investigation case?
I'm not going to discuss any aspect of the investigations of that matter, except to say that I have continued to be not just cooperative, but actively assisting whenever that's appropriate. That's all I'll say.
Yes, again from Azelia Iniguez from Telemundo. Have there been any fines or repercussions to businesses that are price gouging on COVID at-home test kits?
No fines are imposed yet because we haven't had any specific cases with regard to price gouging yet. We are investigating preliminarily some allegations, and if those result in enforcement actions, we will let you know immediately.
All right, that wraps it up for our questioning today.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks for being so attentive to this important issue.